I think the most challenging step for any project I've had is just having the courage to get started. You have to be sort of bold when you're designing something and then actually getting started. And once you're started, it runs pretty smooth. I mean, oftentimes I have self-doubt as I'm working on it, but you work through that and it always turns out okay. But it is sort of an emotional struggle many times. My wife commissioned me to make a cabinet for all of her pills because you reach a certain age and you have more pills than you need. I like tools that aren't noisy, so I actually like using hand planes and chisels and doing as much by hand as I can. That way I can have the radio going and still hear it, which you can't hear if you've got table saw and the dust collection system going. So that's the most enjoyable. The tool I'm most careful with, is the table saw. You can spread blood around the room before you know it happened. So extremely cautious. You need to be within 10 thousandths of an inch for good joinery. It's got to be right on. In fact, instead of using rulers and measuring sticks, many times you have to feel with your fingertips to make sure that two boards are exactly the same width. It's critical. If you put, I don't know how many pieces of wood there are in this, but it's a bunch of them, and if it's not just perfect, it doesn't go together right. And you learn over and over again the requirements. If you take the time to be accurate, you get a better result. So it just takes more time. For the carcass of the cabinet, I used wingay, which turns out to be nice and black, like a picture frame. And then the two doors on the inside on this cabinet, it's rosewood, book matched rosewood. Very pretty. I started making furniture out of necessity. When I left my parents and was living in a very small apartment above a garage, and we needed a bookcase, I went down to Lake Union and found a couple of planks, 3 of them, and got some bricks from the gas works along the beach and made a bookcase. And for a guy, that's fine. But as time goes on, ladies like to feather their nests. And so I had to keep evolving my skill level to match her demands. And so the bookcase behind you is a product of evolution from bricks and beach boards to, to a walnut bookcase. That little back porch on the side of our apartment, I use that space to make whitewater kayak paddles to help supplement tuition costs when I was a young feller. And this paddle is a little bit dog-eared because it's been down Colorado River, Green River, Yampa in Utah, all the major rivers up in Idaho and Oregon, and of course Washington. The first table I made that I still have is the little walnut kitchen table, and those legs came out of a limb of a tree and where we lived in Oklahoma City. I've probably made a half a dozen tables for the house and a couple more for family members. Well, everyone starts a little bit different. It's just you get a design idea and whatever pops into your head at the time is how it evolves. And I've built several desks, a couple of chest of drawers. My wife requested a stand-up desk and a place to hold all her stamps and accounting books. And so this zebra wood desk evolved from that necessity. The desk upstairs in my bedroom incorporates just gentle, almost unperceivable curves so that the top is not a perfect rectangle. And subliminally, it looks less harsh than a pure rectangle desk. It's part of a whole bedroom suite. Wanted a matching chest of drawers. I built that, the lower one that's mine, and then my wife liked it, so I made one for her, which is more of a high boy. The media cabinet, I call it the Big Bang cabinet because the central doors, the patterns radiate out from a central point, sort of like an explosion. I had to add a three-dimensional element into just what the wood was showing you, so that's why the sides are curved and the bottom doesn't have straight legs. It's curved up into the cabinet to make it flow. I've probably made 6 chairs, and the Craftsman style chairs were designed primarily to be comfortable because that's where we eat our meals at. It's all walnut and it's got sort of a Frank Lloyd Wright inspiration in there. I've refined the design that was comfortable, the contours, each time I built another chair system. The bar stools were a challenge to make because there weren't any 90-degree angles. All the pieces of wood are curved and tapered, and it's sort of a figment in your brain that you use as a challenge to put together to test your skills. The wife wanted some chairs that had a mid-century modern look, and she found some on the internet on sale for $8,000 a piece, and that was my motivation to go to my wood pile, get some walnut, and see what I could do. And I'm pleased with the result. I probably didn't make my first chair till after I'd been making furniture for 20 years because the joinery has to be perfect, and structurally people are sitting in it, so those joints have to hold up over a lifetime. When I was a kid, I was on a kayak trip on the west side of Vancouver Island. This was back in the early 60s, and came across a Indian graveyard on the beach next to their village. And there was one grave that was a picket fence, had 4 corners, and on each corner was a mask. And one of them had a jaw that articulated and a tongue that articulated. And it just gobsmacked me. I was thinking, man, these should be in a museum, but it was a private cemetery. That got my interest going in Pacific Northwest art. It wasn't until 50 years later that I happened to rub shoulders with a carver of Native American material. And he mentored me. He showed me how to make the tools that were used for carving. He didn't criticize my work too much when I was making things. He always complimented me like a good teacher does. The first piece was that Beaver Clan mask out in the front porch, which, if that was my 10th mask, it would look a lot different. So it's a learning curve. And I think with each project, you get better. And it takes a while. The first mask is not good. Not too many of the Native American tribes made mountain goat masks. I wanted to make something that was a little more anatomic and looked like a goat. So, yeah, the first one I made didn't have a long enough nose, and so I had to make another one that had a longer nose. A little bit more anatomically correct, but still some Native American sensibility to it. This little guy's got articulating jaw as well. That's a heron, and that's made out of Alaska cedar from a log that I found on the beach, because you can get old growth, fine grained material off the beach that comes down the rivers, but you can't go to Lowe's or Home Depot and get old growth fine grained Alaska cedar. So that's where I get my material. Yeah, he's kind of cute. One that's the chief of the underworld. He was probably the richest of the chiefs because he had a whole bunch of copper. That's why he's got copper eyes. And on the eyebrows, I put some octopus suckers to help represent the undersea world. There's one that's the ancestral sun, who was the mask depiction of the sun before the raven came and stole fire from him and gave him to mankind. So in their ceremonies, they have another mask that represents the current sun. Kind of got tired of making these angry masks, and the moon mask was a little bit calmer and benevolent and would fit nice in a dining room. This little guy is a hyena mask, originally called a prairie hawk, and I call him Chief Angry Bird. And he's from the same log of Alaska cedar that I made the heron from. Really a nice piece of wood that was very enjoyable to carve. That's a copy of a Tlingit raven, not really a mask, it's a frontispiece that they'd wear on the forehead. The bottom of that would be sort of at eyebrow level, and it would be part of a headdress. That's an owl mask, and once again, I had fun with it. The whites of the eyes and an owl, they've got the big shield around the eyes, and the owl masks do have that same feature. I've just embellished a little bit to make it sort of funny, because most of their masks are sinister. They're angry. I think they're made to scare the children, because they're telling stories in their ceremonies to the tribe and reinforcing cultural norms and traditions. And so they're not that, they're scary. So I make a few things that are less scary, more whimsical. I call this guy Condescending Bear. I carved this shortly after I had a run-in with a grizzly bear in Glacier National Park who looked me in the eye and said, "If I wanted you dead, you'd be dead." The frog is depicted in our Northwest art as a purveyor of wisdom. So when he sticks his tongue out, he's purveying wisdom to the animal in the mask. Well, they had grizzlies on the West Coast too, which is the same thing. Big brown bears or grizzly bears, they'll both kill you just as easy. Mr. Bear is just made out of western red cedar. I just wanted him to look a little bit more like a bear than some of the masks. Sometimes I put him a little bit more like that. Well, he's made out of western red cedar, old growth cedar, nice fine grained stuff. and just a Hyeta style raven mask with inner cedar bark punk hair. That piece of wood the totem is made out of, I saw it on the beach. I actually saw the raven in there. So I just took a very small amount of wood off to create the raven. I also wanted to make a two-figure pole, and the raven perched on the frog is a traditional house post figure that you see in Hyeta carvings. Or the wings on his shoulders actually were made to look like a blanket that's enfolding the raven. A big part of the Native American culture was their potlatches, and they would create these nice bowls for everyday use and the fancier ones so the dignitaries could have a fine piece of culinary art to eat their meal in. And they're an art form in their own. The frog bowl is fun and whimsical, and many of the bowls have an extended head and maybe tail feathers because it sat in your knees. The Native Americans didn't have chairs, so they were sitting on their hind ends with their knees folded, and that was their knees were their table. The carving skills I picked up in doing the native art projects, I just transferred those over into making little sculptures that were just for fun. So I could just come up with my own design, something that made me smile or chuckle, and did my own carving from there. And so I've branched out into polar bears and birds and whatever one of the family members needs at the moment. It's hard to have a favorite, you know. Maybe this hawk here I like him. Yeah, a piece of walnut that was in the tree in Oklahoma City that died, and I've drug that around with me for 40, 50 years, and it was either burn it or see what's in that piece of wood. So I made a hawk out of it. I like the white around the outside and the little knob. It was sort of a free-form vision of a hawk as opposed to all the details on it. And he just came out of the wood. So that was a nice experience. And he's cute and simple. That owl in the front room is made from a piece of holly that was in someone's front yard as I was bicycling around the neighborhood, and it said free, just a big pile of white, light wood. And owls are sort of an iconic structure. You can make them sort of smooth, but to get the eyes and the nose and everything just right it's a good challenge. And yeah, he kind of turned out cute. I enjoy him. Well, that's something that my wife has had for many years, and she just loves it. And our daughter decided she would like it. So my wife asked me to make a copy. And I went to my wood pile, and all the pieces were too small to fit that goose in. So I went on a hunt for more material, hence the expedition down into the ravine to find a piece of wood. And I found this at the bottom of the hill instead of the top of the hill, but that's where it was. It's some beauty, but you look at the section here and you can see there's lots of shimmer in there. Well, I won't have to go to the gym today. Victory. What's it gonna be? There's beauty underneath there when you get those waves and wrinkles. Gorgemonious. What makes it pretty also makes it less easy to carve and manipulate, but I'm more than willing to pay that price. The guitars got started because other people asked me to put veneer on the body of the guitars they were making. And that got me interested, so I decided to make my own body shapes just out of fun. And they are a beautiful standing art objects that's also functional. The right people can create beautiful sounds from those guitars. Well, I was encouraged to make spoons by some other people I was rubbing shoulders with at an organization. And I just found that it was a quick fix for your artistic inspiration. It's something you could do in a short period of time. And the materials are all around you. I can go out and pick a piece of firewood out of the wood pile and turn it into a little art object or a little spoon that has some whimsy maybe, or maybe some live edges to it. I got started working in the yacht business because the tech boom exploded and took away part of my retirement. And the wife wanted me to go back to work, and I said, do you mind if I just do something that would be fun and to make grocery money? And she said, fine. So woodworking was my hobby, and I eventually worked my way through, after working for a couple of other small cabinet companies, that I got enough, quote, credibility to move into working for a real neat company that made high-end furniture and yacht interiors. There was a whole bunch of pieces on a yacht called the Mr. Terrible. And it was all fun because the designer actually kind of gave me free rein to work between his sketches, and it was really neat to do that. It was a real pleasure for me because I got to work with people who were really, really good. If you live in a vacuum working in your little garage, you can only progress so far. But man, I got exposed to the finest materials in the world, the finest designers in the world that created the designs for the things we had to work on, and working shoulder to shoulder with craftsmen that were way beyond my ability and always will be. But it was an honor to be with them. All the things I wanted to do as a beginning woodworker, I have been able to do those things. And that's part of the problem of continuing, because the motivation is usually the challenge. It's like mountain climbing. I mean, why do you do rock climbing? Part of that equation is a challenge and overcoming your flippin' fear. I grew up in the mountains. You always look at those high peaks that you can't get to on the trail, and it's a challenge you want to do. One fun one was the northeast buttress of Slessie up in northern Cascades, just up across the border into British Columbia. Sort of have to sleep on a ledge at night, you know. It's a 2-day climb up, and Had some drama along the way, had some injuries. We planned on a 3-day trip and had food for 3 days, but ended up spending more than 3 days up there to get out an injured climber, and got a little bit hungry and a little bit thirsty towards the end of that. My dad was a latent artist. I remember when my son was in the hospital with an appendix issue, he sat down next to him with a pencil and paper and drew a picture of a hawk without looking at a picture of a hawk, completely from memory. Every feather, it was perfect, and it was like a photographic memory that somehow was in there that was amazing. And the reason I saw, I didn't really care at the time, but my son, who's now got children of his own, he showed me that picture. He saved it, and I looked at that and go, man, I could. When I'm doing some of this artwork, call it art, I'm looking back at the picture continually to get the image right. But he could do it right from an image in his head, which amazed me. He said, what one man can do, so can another. I've kept that as an inspiration, that just because you see something that's spectacular, it's obtainable. You just have to have the courage to get started and try. And you may not reach the mark on the first shot, but if you keep at it, you'll get closer to where you're satisfied with what you do. I remember a math professor who was a neighbor who said, what's the big deal with math? It's just logic. And I go, yeah, what's the problem? You got it and I don't. Yeah. All men are not created equal.